All right, so today is the day. I'm gonna go drive this thing today. Last couple of days, I've just been working on finishing up the wiring and fixing some leaks. The power steering was leaking. It was actually leaking from the banjo on the pump. I thought the AN was gonna leak, but it was actually the banjo from the pump. I'll insert a picture here. It had like a little booger, like a brazed booger on it, and it wasn't sealing. So I wasn't able to find new crush washers for it, and it did have a divot in the crush washer, so I did put a little RTV on it and impacted the schnitzel out of it. Hopefully that thing doesn't leak. I'm not even going to check it. I'm just going to go drive it because it was a pretty slow leak. I'm going to go drive it to the gas station, put some ED5 in it. I'll check it while I'm at the gas station. Just kind of loom all the wires and everything that I had here. I hooked up my fans. Matt Happel actually sent me this fitting like a couple years ago when I was doing the yellow Mustang, and I just never used it. So I decided to use it on this so I could have a removable fan section. So I do have a reverse and trans brake button hooked up. I did put a bass tune in it. I actually have to flash it or download it to the ECU, but I have a bass set up in there. This isn't going to be a crazy drive. This is just the first drive. So I also want to check the transmission fluid. I have about 12 quarts of transmission fluid in it now, so I'm bringing some transmission fluid and a funnel with me, so I'll get it up to temp and then check it. I'm just going to be verifying that there's no major leaks, everything functions, checking make sure that the fans turn on, it doesn't get too hot. And then I'll probably modify the fuel a little bit, like I'll build a learn table, transfer learning to base, and we'll see how that stuff goes. Might not get into boost at all. It is the very first day, but I have done it before, so we'll see how far we get. I just have one line going to the bottom of the gate, so it would be just on wastegate. I don't have a boost controller on it right now, so maybe that'll protect me from myself a little bit. I have a reasonable spark map in it. It's a little more aggressive than what I had in the Banana Mustang, but that was a Gen 3 bottom end, and this is a forged bottom end, so that should be fine. Famous last words. Well, let's go do it. I also do have a phone with me, and it's charged, and wife is on speed dial, and she knows the drill, so let's do something. I got it up on the jack stands now. I'm gonna run the rear wheels. I don't think I remember seeing speed when I was looking at it because I was watching line temp, but I never saw speed. So if I'm not getting a speed signal, that would be why it's not shifting. Interesting. Alright, so I cleared all my data logs because the files are kind of confusing and I couldn't find my files. So I deleted all the old ones, went for another drive quick around the block, and I'm going to look at the new data log. It's almost acting like the shift solenoids aren't getting power, like it's just staying in second gear. Because mile per hour was coming up. I got it up to like 32, 35 miles per hour, but it was showing third and fourth gear and like 2300 RPM. So I know 2300 RPM in overdrive is not 30 miles an hour. So it's acting like it's just saying in second, which is what the transmission would do if you just unplugged it. You would still have reverse and you would still have second gear. It just defaults to full line pressure typically and stays in second gear. So it's acting like there's no power to the transmission, but I am getting speed signal, turbine signal, and temperature. So I know those are working. So I'm gonna verify power at the plug, and then I'll check the shift solenoids, and then we'll go from there. All right, so sorry I'm not doing a screen recording here, but I'm gonna just record it like this just to show you what I'm looking at. So there's first gear, second gear, third gear. It shows me that it is commanding the shifts. Here is the RPM line, which is pretty flat, so the RPM isn't changing. Here, this purple line is the input shaft speed. So what I want to do is I want to calculate the gear ratio looking at this thing. So what I'll do is I'll look at around 1000 RPM there. It's showing 16 miles per hour. Now I'll go to 2000 RPM, and I'll just make sure that the ratio is the same. So once you get to 2000 RPM, we're at 32 miles per hour. So RPM doubled, speed doubled, so that tells me that the ratio is the same all the way through this RPM change. So even though it's commanding first, second, and third, RPM's not changing, but at least the ratio is staying the same. So that tells me the transmission's not slipping and it's locked in one gear. So then what I did was just use this Spicer gear ratio calculator, 3.73 rear ratio, 29.5 inch tire, that's what's in the tune, 2000 RPM, and a 1.48 second gear ratio. Gives me 31.81, or basically 32 miles per hour. And here shows 2000 RPM at 32 miles per hour. So I got the 1.48 number out of the tune, and that's just the 4L80 second gear ratio. So now what that'll tell me is the transmission is physically in second gear. The transmission's not slipping because the RPM and mile per hour is the same throughout the range. Like the input shaft speed isn't increasing while the mile an hour is deviating from the input shaft speed. So that tells me that the transmission's not slipping, it's locked in second gear, and that's what the 4L80 does when it's unplugged. It will lock in second gear. Second gear and reverse will still work. It'll default to max line pressure, which isn't relevant to this transmission because it's a fixed line pressure setup. But at least with that information, I know that the transmission's not slipping. It's probably just not getting power to the shift solenoids, or there's something going on there. So what I'll do is I'll unplug it, check for power to the transmission, to the shift solenoids, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I got the plug dropped down. I hooked up some wires. I did not have power at the plug. So, and I set up this multimeter hooked up to the transmission plug because I was going to show you the exact wire that didn't have power. So I split my whole harness apart here and trace down the wires coming from the relays on the harnesses. So I had two switched power wires, and I looked at the diagram online for the terminator, like the 4L80 PDF or whatever, and the only red wire that's coming to the plug is coming from the relay. So the switched power wire is what activates the relay, and then it sends a solid red wire 12 volt power from the relay. So I had a hunch that this switch power wasn't getting power or whatever, so pulled it apart, and then I used this jumper here, and I jumped one switched power wire for the ECU over to the one for the transmission, and then I had 13.5 volts here. So that was pretty easy to verify that this wire didn't have power. A lot of this stuff was wired before I hooked this stuff up, so I had it labeled. So you got all these labels on here from the last setup that I had. So I used the same switch 12 volt power wire, and apparently it wasn't working. But it was weird when I was measuring it. It was reading like 4 volts, 6 volts, 0. It was kind of like intermittent. So then I set up the multimeter because I was going to show this to you and how that didn't have power, and when I jumped it, it had power. But now I can't replicate the situation where it doesn't have power. So I ended up wiggling around some wires down in the harness. So I'm thinking there might have been a broken wire somewhere inside the harness down here, because when I pulled the wire and adjusted this, now it has 12 volts all the time. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pull 12 volt from a different source, because this is all still factory harness that was spliced into over here. I do have a couple other switch 12 volt sources, so I'm going to move it from that one because there might be a bad or broken wire in there. I'm unable to replicate losing the voltage right now, but I'd rather not deal with it, so I'm going to move the wire. Another potential cause could be the relay in the truck that's sending the switch 12 volt here could be a sticky. Maybe when I jumped it, it activated the relay and now it's okay, but I'm still going to move it. All right, so got the wiring deal figured out, and go drive it again, make sure everything shifts. Charger hooked up to the damn transmission is messed up. It goes way lean, so I'll have to add some throttle transition fuel. It goes to like 20 air fuel ratio. Alright, I'll check the shifts quick. I'll get down to first gear. Get on to first gear. Okay, so first drive is in the books. I do have a transmission leak. It's actually leaking from the pump. It's either leaking between the case and the pump or from the bolts. I can't really tell. I might have to pull that thing back out and fix that leak. It was really bad when the truck was tilted forward. It was like dripping out pretty good, but when it's flat, it's not so bad. So maybe if I just keep it flat, I can at least get it through the weekend. Because I would like to maybe be able to just drive it a couple days this week and then try to make it to the track on Friday, pending if I can get wheels and tires or not. Like I said, a drag radials or something. Hunter said he might let me borrow his, but if I could find a set, I might go. But yeah, didn't have power. So like I said, it was pulling power from the factory harness on the truck, and I think it was a broken wire or something inside the factory harness, because it was reading 4 volts and 6 volts when I measured it, and it was kind of coming in and out of power, so it was probably just an issue with the wiring from the factory harness. So that's just your daily reminder that if something's wrong with your Holly, it's probably your fault. But yeah, quick fix. It helped. I kind of knew exactly where to go based on the symptoms of it not shifting gears and being locked in second. So just verify that it was actually in that gear and it's acting just like it's unplugged, essentially. No power. So I'm glad that was an easy fix. Nothing major. So far, all of the issues have just been annoying because they've all been like leaks and little stuff. So I did roll into boost. It was like probably one pound. It was like 105 kPa or something. I stopped because I still saw 14 air fuel ratio. I did look at the target air fuel ratio table, and it had 14.7 all the way up to like 10 pounds. So I don't know. I did look at it, but I must not have looked at the axis properly or something. But That's an easy fix. I just adjusted the target air fuel ratio table, and it'll be golden next time we go out. I did do the same thing on the Mustang on the very first drive with that thing. I took it out and target air fuel ratio table wasn't adjusted right, and started to roll into boost, and it stayed at 14. Adjusted the table, and then it was fine. So as long as nothing catastrophic happens, I should be able to take it out the next couple days and kind of do some tweaking. And I might hook up a boost controller. I was thinking about just leaving it on gate, but I have a 3-port, so I might as well hook it up. Better to have it and not need it than trying to be poking holes in your vacuum lines trying to add boost and all this other crap. Oh my God, the trans brake. I tested the trans brake, and the damn thing works spectacular. It felt so good when it released. It actually squawked the tires a little bit, and I was only at like 2,500 RPM or something. So I'm so happy that felt the way that it did. The transmission's up to temperature and just released immediately. If you're not familiar, this trans brake was in the Escalade that I had, and it was binding and doing all this weird shit, and I would drive it and it would like completely lock the tires. It locked it at like 25 miles an hour one time. A 6,000 pound truck, all-wheel drive, going like 25, 30 miles an hour, completely locked everything up. So I spent a lot of time troubleshooting that and learning about that trans brake. I put it in this truck to verify it. This was a while back, and the issues followed the valve body. So this had a working 4L80 in it. The Escalade had a 4L80 in it. And I moved the valve body over to this truck just to see if the symptoms would follow, and the symptoms followed. It wouldn't release, it was binding, and I ended up swapping the solenoids out and kind of cleaning everything, and it worked a couple times, and then the torque converter failed on this truck, and that was like almost 2 years ago now. That's kind of what started this whole rebuild process, because the trans was junk and it was down anyways. So I'm very happy that the thing felt like it did. So I do have some other videos talking about that issue. I have another video talking about the solenoid specifically, and I've been talking to more people now that have been having that same issue. So I think it was worth it, the time that I put into troubleshooting it, because now I feel like I understand the issue and can maybe help other people with it. And I think I have helped a couple other people that were having a similar issue. Basically what's happening is the solenoids are not exhausting the fluid fast enough, and it's applying the trans brake while it's moving, or slowly applying the trans brake. So that can also happen if the solenoids are getting dirty. So if you're getting clutch material building up over time, it'll start to clog the screens and drag the trans brake, drag reverse or apply reverse. So now feeling that, I'm pretty confident that I have that issue solved. So that feels good. I'm gonna be done rambling for this one. Let everything cool down, maybe take it back out tomorrow. Really appreciate everyone watching to this point. Leave a comment if you made it to the end, and we're getting somewhere.